entitled Effective Interaction in the TCI Classroom. And you may be wondering, what is that? What is effective interaction? Well, for our definition, effective interaction is the exchange that happens during successful communication. So when one message is clearly given from one source to another and well received and completed and understood, that is effective interaction. It can look like a lot of different things, and it can happen in a lot of different circumstances. It might be between two people who have just met. It might be between two people who know each other really well. When there is speaking involved, it includes powerful statements, clarifying questions, and supportive responses. Not everyone in the interaction has to speak. The nonverbal responses are around the outside. Eye contact, sound effects, facial expressions, movements, gestures, drawing and pictures, pausing, pointing, and we'll talk more about these later. These are the ways that the speaker can enhance what he or she is saying. And it is also a way for those who are listening, the other half of the conversation, to become involved and to share a response in order to encourage. When people give us statements or when people answer our questions, it's helpful and normal and human interaction-wise to give supportive responses. If we give supportive responses, the people we're conversing with or interacting with are more likely to continue to speak. And this is something that is really important for us to model and to ask of our students. It's not natural for a lot of them to give supportive responses, especially at certain age levels. Paying attention to what other people are saying and responding in a positive way isn't really in their wheelhouse yet. Or it used to be when they were younger, and it's been sort of set aside. So this is a great opportunity for us to model some amazing skills and incorporate language. So one of the ways to do that as a teacher is to use high frequency language so that we're modeling vocabulary and structures that students know, so that when they're in the position to be supportive and to respond, they will have access to those phrases. It allows us to encourage participation. Anytime we thank students, anytime we welcome students, anytime we congratulate students or point out what a good insight they've had, it encourages them to be involved in more conversations. It's a wonderful way to create and to strengthen community, and it's a great way to use rejoinders or common statements or responses that are used in the target language. Now, those kind of responses are really natural to kids when they're in their peer group. And oftentimes, I will ask them as a homework assignment to observe their peers on the bus or during lunch and look for the kinds of supportive responses they see their peers giving to each other. Even if you just catch a short video or show a picture like this, you can see evidence of effective interaction. One or more kids is speaking and the others are responding. When I first started teaching with comprehensible input, this was me. I didn't understand what comprehensible meant. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but the truth was I had to grow into that definition. I really thought I was comprehensible before. I've always thought I was comprehensible. Why would I be talking to my students if I didn't think they could understand me? But the truth was, I wasn't really comprehensible. I just thought I was. And I was basing that on the curriculum, on what I thought my students should be able to comprehend. And of course, that is not exactly what they comprehended. So, what happened was I started to use comprehensible input in my mind, it was anyway, in different activities in the classroom. And the reactions I got were not exactly what I was hoping for. Some of my classes just stared at me, or stared at the floor, or stared at the desk, or stared at each other, but they weren't responding. And it wasn't just my first period class. Then I had other classes, they just wouldn't be quiet. They blah, 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 blurting and blabbing. And that wasn't just at the end of the day. Then there were other classes that I could drag through the activity, but they really gave me attitude. This was not something they were engaged in. So I really started to ask myself, is this working? I mean, is this comprehensible input thing even really a thing? Or did I just get caught up and carried away with the idea of it? And in reality, it's not as doable as people say it is. Well, the truth is, I had some real heart to heart talks with my students about what was going on. And what they told me was they didn't understand me. That was rough. That was really rough because I thought that I was doing what I needed to do. And it took me a while to realize that I was looking at comprehensible from my perspective, what I thought should be comprehensible, not what was actually comprehensible and comprehended by my students. And a shout out to Dr. Terry Waltz for reminding us over and over again that that is so important. We need to make the classroom a safe place for them to take chances. So whether it's allowing a presenter to make a mistake on a slide, or whether it's allowing you as the teacher to make a mistake in your lesson plan and put one thing before another, we need to model for them that it is okay to make mistakes. We need to respond to our own mistakes with forgiveness and with calmness. Because if we can't respond to our own mistakes with forgiveness and calmness, how will students ever trust that we will respond to theirs? If we repeat over and over again how sorry we are that we made a mistake, the message we're giving to students is making mistakes is something unforgivable and you have to beg for forgiveness. Well, that's not the truth. Making mistakes is human. So make sure that when you make a mistake or when students make a mistake, that we respond without judgment. And we let them know that making mistakes is not only part of the deal, it's actually a welcome part of the deal. How can we build that in? How can we do that? Well, we sometimes just make mistakes because we're human and we're overscheduled and we had and underslept. And other times, if we're careful, we can actually schedule in a mistake. Don't be afraid to start a song, plan to do the gestures wrong, and then ask the students to help you. When we make ourselves vulnerable to our students and let them know that we also need support and that they can give it to us with dignity, then we've created some community. Allowing students to show you in a safe and acceptable way that something is confusing creates a safe space that lets students be where they are, that it's okay to not have it all yet. Because when we don't allow them that space, what we're telling them, whether we use words or not, is you shouldn't be there. You should be here. You should get this by now. And whether that could be the truth, all right? But very few people improve because someone is pointing out to them how much improvement they need. Now, as the people helping them improve, we'd like to think that's what they need to hear. But the truth is, the more people tell you you need to improve, the less motivation you have. You don't feel like you're able to. So we're going to build in from the day one ways that students can communicate to us that they do not understand what the message was. Now, there's a lot of ways to do this, and you're going to watch different examples of this as these lessons go by. You could have them clap their hands. You can have them stomp their feet. You can have them wave a hand over their head. You can have them do a timeout signal. They could have a little sign on their desk that they flip over. There are lots and lots of ways that you can have students respond. But they need one. And so first we need to teach it, and then we need to practice it. And then if they don't use it when we know they don't understand, we need to stop the lesson and reteach it and repractice it and reuse it until they give us this on a regular basis. And truthfully, you're going to have to reteach this over and over again all year long. Kids have been trained from kindergarten or preschool to always act like they get it. That's what teachers want. They want their students to get it. And so we want to train them that it's okay if they don't. It can be so hard to say, I don't understand, to publicly put that out there. Even if we've told our students, look, if you don't understand, I promise you other kids won't understand either. It's still hard, especially if you're not comfortable saying things out loud in front of the class. So we can shift the message a little bit and put the onus back on the teacher. Instead of having students say, I don't understand, let's have the student say, that wasn't clear. Or what does that mean? Or could you please repeat that? Could you say that more slowly? And one of my favorites is, did you say, and I teach them how to say that in the target language, right? Did you say, and then let them repeat it. Because 9 times out of 10, they actually did hear what I said, but they're just not confident. And so this gives them a way to check in and see, is that what they really heard? And all that it actually provides for me is reassurance that they heard me, right? I get to congratulate them, and the other kids in the class get more input. It doesn't get much better than that. One of our support videos is about an explanation for TCI, and it's called an explanation woven for you. And in that explanation, we talk about why personalization is approached so differently in our classrooms. It is literally woven into every single piece that we do. And while in the center, you may see the design features of teaching with comprehensible input, every single one of those design features is enhanced and celebrated with personalization. If the only thing that you grow in watching these videos is personalization, you can completely change your classroom. Personalization helps us get that tight weave. In other words, we create a space in the brain that becomes sticky for language and hangs on to language. And one of the key ingredients to that is personalization. So the Learn Together team wanted you to see a variety of ideas. So, personalization, what does that mean anyway? Well, one way to look at it is recognizing that students and teachers are people. Now, maybe that's a little obvious, but the truth is, when we walk into that building, we tend to shed our person and become a teacher. We take on a role. And we often find it very easy to see the people in front of us as students and forget that they're actually people. It's very, very easy to do, especially when there is a lot being asked of us. So one of the goals in personalization is that we're going to try to strengthen all of the respectful relationships that we can in the school setting. so that when they start asking themselves, am I accepted and do I like my role here? We've been pointing out to them on a regular basis positive things about where they are. Let's face it, each student deserves, every single one of our kids deserves attention and recognition. And that is hard if you have 40 students. It's hard if you even have 12 students in a class, but they deserve it. That doesn't mean that it's easy for us to do. And that doesn't mean that we at Learn Together think you're not doing a good job. What we believe they need more than any of that is sincerity. One sincere piece of attention or recognition is worth 40 that have been cobbled together because someone told you you should do X, Y, and Z. So there are lots of things that we know that you already do. So we want to ask you as you go through this process to pay attention to what you already do sincerely for your students. We aren't asking you yet to take on anything new. We want you to first take a look at what already exists. How do you already recognize the person in your students? This year I'm teaching in a school that has this crazy A through G schedule. And so every week, every day is different. And so at the beginning of class, I talk about when we're going to see each other this week, when we saw each other last week, and when we're going to see each other next week. This is a great review for language. It also lets kids tell me if they're not going to be there one of those days. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a fan of memes. And I have found a lot of ways to use memes as routine and to complement routines. So this one says, want to play again? And it's my signal for we're going to use rock, paper, scissors as a brain break. A lot of times I use memes at the beginning for the do now. This one says, today will be the best Tuesday of the week. In 3 sentences, I ask them to write down, tell me why. This could be a do now that they put in a notebook. It could be something that they turn in for an assignment via dashboard. Or it could be a ticket out the door, however you want to work it. It's really important to figure out how to prepare our students when we've changed our style of teaching. Without informing the students, we aren't giving them the respect that they deserve as the recipients of all of the hard work that we've done. So, by preparing our students well and setting norms for the class, we can guarantee so much more success for you and for your students. So, how do we do that? How do we prepare students for a new environment? Well, there are 3 basic places to start. First, we can explain what language acquisition is. There's a difference between language learning and language acquisition. And when our students understand the difference between language acquisition and language learning, and why we have chosen language acquisition as our method of delivery, then our students will have more of a chance of getting on board with us and joining in with what we are doing. Respond as you were instructed to respond. This is super important. For us, it means that we have to instruct them on how we want them to respond. If we don't give students clear instructions, we will get a messy response. And we need a clear response. A clear response is our feedback. Clear responses are, did they understand the message and can they respond to it? If my instructions are not clear and my message isn't clear, I'm going to get a mess in response. Now, after teaching using what I knew as comprehensible input, I sought out other teachers and I sought out training. And how do I do this well? How do I do this better? How can I really benefit my students? I just sort of have a basic idea, How can I do even better? Because I was watching other teachers do it better than I was. And I really wanted to know, how can I give my students the best possible opportunity for success? So, this is the paradigm that I've grown into, and this is the paradigm that we believe in and learn together, and we want to share with you. Again, those vertical pieces there have not changed at all. They are still comprehensible input and they are still compelling input. Without those two things, as Dr. Krashen says, nothing is going to stick. Now, weaving those together are how we're going to deliver the language and how students are going to interact with it. We're going to start with and stay strong with listening interactions. Why? That's how we're wired. The brain needs to hear a language, to hear the music of it when it can. That's not to say that people who don't hear well can't acquire a language. They can, but they're going to need some special supports. The vast majority of our students, however, have fully functioning hearing, and the brain wants to hear the language so that it can do the work that it is already programmed and wired to do. So we want to make sure that we start in the beginning with our students, whether they are novices or advanced level students. If we are starting them off with TCI, we want to make sure that they experience a lot of success with listening interactions so that the brain can start building on the sounds and the music and the rhythms that are inherent in any language. Once those have gotten strong, students can then begin to read. Students who are already literate in one language can begin reading in a second or third language much more quickly. And often the younger the student is, the longer we wait before we introduce reading. But reading is, according to Krashen's research, the most powerful way to grow and improve language. So as soon as students are ready, we want to layer in reading interactions using the target language. In addition, we want meaningful speaking. This actually happens way more often than meaningful writing. And both of these, meaningful writing and meaningful speaking, do not start in complete, wonderful paragraphs or sentences. They start in small, responsive chunks of language that naturally occur. The speaking in particular just aids in discussion. It aids in conversation. It aids in the exchange of input. So when a student is able to contribute to a conversation with some meaningful words or phrases or questions, it actually elicits more powerful input for the student. All of this, every single piece of it, is surrounded and woven with personalization. You can see that personalization is vertical and horizontal because the more personalization you have, the tighter this weave is, and the more support you get for students and from students. So every single time we get the opportunity, we are going to personalize.